Matt, thank you for joining me. Matt Berwick is the Senior Program Manager, Disability Accommodations and Civil Rights Compliance at UPMC. You serve as President of the United Spinal Association of Pittsburgh and a member of the Pittsburgh Steel Wheelers. But today we want to learn about your passion for adaptive sports.
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about your journey of getting into adaptive sports.
Yeah, so I had my spinal cord injury when I was 15, and I spent 6 days in the acute hospital, and then I was transferred to a rehab hospital. When I made my way to the rehab hospital, it was on a Friday or a Saturday. It's been a long time, but the details get a little fuzzy. But on that Sunday, so 6 days after my spinal cord injury, I actually met the wheelchair rugby team here in Pittsburgh.
Oh, awesome.
And was able to see adaptive sports for the first time. And really that was the eye-opening experience for me that I knew I was going to make it. I knew it was going to be okay. Because I was able to see athletes that were active in the community. On the team, there were lawyers and business owners and people that were going to school. And as a 15-year-old, it was great to be able to see kind of what came next after being in the hospital. Now, granted, it was only 6 days, so I really hadn't understood what a spinal cord injury was and what my life was going to look like. But being able to see the athletes that were there and that they found a passion through adaptive sports and that they continued to have fulfilling lives was really eye-opening to me, really so soon after my spinal cord injury.
I can only imagine 6 days post-injury, seeing that there probably was no, oh, well, now I can't do something, right?
For sure.
It was all I can do.
Yes. And wheelchair rugby in itself is a very physical sport. It's full contact, wheelchair to wheelchair. So you see individuals that are often seen as fragile or broken, slamming into each other, playing a sport on a basketball court. And it was really that just, this is going to be okay moment. And really that's why adaptive sports have meant so much to me throughout my time having a spinal cord injury, that when I have the opportunity to participate in any adaptive sport, I say, sure, we'll get a go. It might be the sport that means nothing to me, but I'll try it at least once just because.
That's awesome. And I imagine the fact that you've had these opportunities to try the different sports, it seems to me like this is a great way to build community. How has that impacted you?
Absolutely. So I always tell new individuals that have spinal cord injuries that you will learn a lot from your OTs and PTs in the hospital, but once you get out into the community, you will learn so much more. We have had the opportunity to teach new folks that have spinal cord injuries that get into adaptive sports about just how to live, how to go and be out in the community, how to travel, new ways to go to the bathroom, things that you may have learned in OT or PT, but things that may be easier being taught by somebody that has that same disability as you.
Makes so much sense. And when we talk community, I just think about you and I have kind of traveled in the same circles for a long time, probably met at a prior disability and mental health summit, through class, through the Ryan Shazier Fund. We're traveling in those same circles, but to the point you just made, you have the lived experience that I don't. When you're interacting with other folks that maybe they never heard of adaptive sports or maybe their injury is new, is there something that stands out to you that, you know, when you're dealing with those people first time around that really stands out as this is the impact moment?
Yeah, and I think really what it is, and when you tell somebody that either doesn't have the lived experience or is brand new to the spinal cord community, you have to explain adaptive sports in a way that they're not necessarily always about the sport. It is about the community. It's about having that opportunity to exercise, but just learning from your fellow teammates is so much more impactful, and it really is that sense of community. We have individuals that are playing adaptive sports for years and years and years, and at the point where it's like, okay, I'm physically ready to retire, but mentally I still want to participate. Even if I come and I suit up and I don't get onto the court and play, it's still all about being with people that have similar backgrounds and similar experiences that you do.
And I think some of the things you brought up before, also the fact that it isn't just the sport. It is, these are the people who live a life similar to me, and maybe somebody's been down a road to tell me, like you said, even just using the bathroom, but try the tricks that you've lived, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the other thing too is when you come to that almost hive mind of people, right? So you have all of these individuals that have so many years of lived experience, even if it's something that I haven't dealt with in 20 years, now I'm going to talk to somebody that has lived with a spinal cord injury for longer than I have to say, I'm now aging with my spinal cord injury. What does this next step look like? So in the beginning, it may have been like, well, how do I do this? Or how do I do that? Or how do I fly? But now it's, well, how do I age? Like, what is that next step? What does retirement look like?
Wow.
So really, it's a continuum of just learning that is available to us because of adaptive sports.
That's so huge that it really is so much more. And I think, I mean, you are so big in the community, the disability community as a whole, connecting with folks. But I think some of the things you talked about really help to break down barriers.
For sure.
Can you talk about maybe some of those barriers that you've overcome and therefore you're the teacher for other folks?
Yeah, and there's a lot of barriers in the community, right? So just being able to be out, and I think that's one of the things that I thank adaptive sports for, is if I was not involved in adaptive sports, I don't know if I would be as active in the community as I am. Just thinking about the events that we have through United Spinal and being out and going to a bar and playing trivia, right?
Yes.
So it might not be something that a single individual with a disability is interested in going out and doing, but when we can do that collectively as a group to say, let's all go out and do this because we're going to do this as a community, we're going to do this as a group, and then that individual might say, trivia is the best thing that's ever happened to me. I'm now going to start a trivia team with my able-bodied friends and go out, and I don't have to worry about some of the accessibility barriers because as a community we went out for the first time. So I think that's really the big thing for me is experiencing the opportunities in the community and then sharing that with others so that they know, okay, I can go here, I can go have a beer, and I know that there's accessibility features of the restaurants that are hosting trivia and how to play the trivia, whether that's on an app or whether that's writing down things on paper. So it's overcoming those small things that a lot of the able-bodied individual or non-disabled people don't have to think about when they go to trivia, but those are the things that we want to teach people, that here are the ways to do it so that you can go out and be successful with your family and friends.
I like the concept of teach people, and realistically, you're not just teaching the people living with disabilities, you're teaching the community around them what that interaction looks like.
Absolutely, that is another thing that I love about adaptive sports. So we have our home Slippery Rock tournament, which is our rugby tournament that we host at Slippery Rock. It's every year in November. And we experience the opportunity for the students that are potentially getting into some type of medical field or recreation therapy. But oftentimes during that tournament, there are tours that are coming in of future Slippery Rock students, and they're experiencing the same opportunities that the students are by seeing people with disabilities. And I think that's one of the greatest things about adaptive sports is it breaks down the barrier of, well, what are these people in the community doing? And when you can say, oh, this is basketball, it's just played in a wheelchair, or this is wheelchair rugby and it's the coolest thing I've ever seen because it's just people slamming into each other, or individuals that are rowing or playing bocce or whatever the sport is, it almost normalizes disability in such a way that individuals that may have fears of, well, I don't know if I can talk to that individual because they're disabled, and I don't know why we still have those stigmas in the community, but we do. But it's such a way to break down that barrier for that first conversation. So somebody that may not have interacted with anybody with a disability before, but they've played basketball growing up, they now have a common ground to have that conversation with that person with a disability to say, oh, well, where do you guys travel? Or how do you do this? Or what's traveling in basketball, right? So having that conversation of like, how do you do these things? And translating that able-bodied sport that individual has played for their entire life into, now I'm having a conversation with a person with a disability.
Very cool. And I love that it does, it's not segregated. It is, everyone's part of the same community. How do we do things together?
For sure.
I totally do have to ask, because I have brothers who have played rugby and will say they're able-bodied. I'm not sure sometimes.
Yeah.
But the injuries that occur, when your wheelchairs are slamming into one another, have you ever come out with an injury that...
So it is a relatively safe sport. And the rugby for wheelchair rugby is named rugby almost only for the violent nature of the sport.
Sure.
We don't scrum, we don't do a lot of the things that they do in able-bodied rugby. I've had able-bodied rugby athletes ask me like, well, how do you do this? And I look at them and I'm like, I know nothing about rugby, so I can't even answer that question. But when it comes to wheelchair rugby, I think the violent nature of the sport, most of it is contained by the chair. They are literally battle tanks. They are specially designed wheelchairs that have angles on the wheels to protect your hands, but also give you more stability. So you might see somebody come out with a broken finger, but the worst that I've ever seen, we had a female athlete on our team because wheelchair rugby is co-ed, and she was an individual that was coming here for her PhD at Pitt, and she was from North Carolina, was going to be recruited for soccer to play in college. Unfortunately had her spinal cord injury, but had found her way to adaptive sports. And she still had that I'm going to be a Division I athlete mentality because that never goes away. And she was hit on the court and flipped forward and hit her face off of the basketball court and busted open her eyebrow. And she is tougher than most of the guys that I've played rugby with. And we were at the Paralympic Training Center in Birmingham, Alabama, so there was medical staff on site. And she went over, she said, steri strip me, like just put a Band-Aid on it, I'm ready to go back into the game. And by the second quarter, she was back on the court because she said, I'm angry with myself that this injury happened because I wasn't playing in the right position, and that's why I fell over, and I'm ready to go hit somebody because I need to get the frustration out. So I mean, it's relatively safe from an injury perspective, but secondary injuries do happen to people with disabilities that play adaptive sports. But one of the coolest things about adaptive sports is that it actually reduces the secondary conditions. So there's research out there that shows that individuals that participate in adaptive sports have less pressure injuries, they have less secondary conditions that you might see from somebody that doesn't participate in adaptive sport.
That's good to know. And I don't want to end on injuries, so real quick, what would your advice be to any newcomers to adaptive sports?
Give it a shot. There's a sport out there for everybody. If you're an individual that likes to be by yourself, you can always try hand cycling. There's curling. There are winter sports and summer sports. Just getting in the pool and swimming. It doesn't have to be competitive as long as you're out there and you're doing your best and you're doing something that gives you that cardiovascular feeling, but also gives you that sense of this is something that I've accomplished today.
Love it. And that is connecting our community. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. I have Erika Schmitt with the Children's Home of Pittsburgh. I appreciate you joining me today. I know that the Children's Home provides a lot of services, and we'll drill down a little bit in your role, but can you just give our folks an idea of the types of services that are provided?
Absolutely. So the Children's Home has 6 different programs. Our founding program was Adoption and Permanency, which is where I started my career at the Children's Home in. We also have a pediatric specialty hospital, so that is a licensed acute care hospital that serves as a transitional care program for families that are looking to transition a child with complex medical care needs from hospital to home. We have Child's Way, which is a daycare for youth with complex medical needs. It serves both skilled nurses as well as teachers in the setting, so the children get like a safe medical environment while also getting educational needs met. We have therapy services, which include outpatient and physician prescribed PT, OT, speech, and a feeding clinic. And we have Pediatric View, which is a program that supports children with cortical vision impairment. And last but not least, we have outpatient mental health counseling, which is one of the programs I oversee.
That's a lot, and I can tell we're going to have a greater conversation. But in your role as Director of Counseling and Family Support Services, how are you providing those services to families that need it so much?
So I oversee adoption and permanency. I oversee outpatient mental health counseling, and I oversee medical social work for the organization. And within those programs, there's a couple different areas that I think really stand out under what falls under me. The medical programs are equally important in other ways. But with the services that fall under me, we offer, in our outpatient counseling services, we offer a lot of mental health counseling and support for families and children that are have been diagnosed with a genetic disorder, a developmental disability, neurodiversity, complex medical needs. And we really look at the family as a whole. So we provide individual counseling, to youth. We also provide counseling to families. So the parents, maybe that just got a diagnosis, they're struggling with a change in the diagnosis, learning of a upsetting medical change. We have specific support groups for teens that are neurodivergent, as well as caregivers to youth that are neurodivergent. And our groups are both peer support, so parents connecting to other parents for support, and also a parent educational series that also is really helpful to that population. We also run a free support group for parents of children with complex medical needs.
Okay.
And we do a lot of individual counseling surrounding this entire area of disability, parenting a youth with a disability, parenting a child with a medical need as well.
I can only imagine how huge that effort is, because when you're in the midst of it, you're not thinking about all the other ramifications to your life, and having support from other people like you or know what you're going through has to be huge.
Absolutely. There's a lot of grief, and there's a lot of resources needed, and the support is crucial to success.
And you mentioned complex medical needs, so you've got folks in hospitals that need some kind of support or service or medical care that most folks don't need at home.
Yes.
That's got to change the life in the house.
Absolutely, it changes it drastically.
And then you also mentioned your neurodiverse population.
Mm-hmm.
And I can imagine, as unique as that is to each person, there may be some commonalities to the families.
Yes, and I think something we realized was like a gap in the community was support for the families, peer-to-peer support for some of the challenges that come up that are sort of sometimes lesser talked about, especially if your child is on the lower needs end of the neurodiverse spectrum. So a lot of the services that are out there to support families are for the higher needs autistic population or other neurodiverse population. But for these lower needs children that maybe on the surface do really well in school but are struggling immensely at home, those parents really need the services as well. So a lot of the gaps we're trying to fill are for the parents that just really have not found anything that's a fit for them and their child. Our teen group really works nicely with teens in the same way that are struggling socially in school, don't feel like they fit in because they have ADHD, they have autism. However, they don't necessarily qualify for the services that are out there for kids with higher needs. So it's a way for them to connect with each other, to learn about their diagnosis, to learn about strategies, and for the parents then to learn the strategies as well, and to realize they're not alone in the challenges that might come up.
I would imagine you're normalizing things for them.
Absolutely.
And when you're providing support for the family, I know you've talked about different ways you provide support to the parents. Is there any level of support for the siblings specifically, or is it just whole family?
So we have individual counseling that is outside of this realm as well. So we do general outpatient mental health counseling, and we do a ton of play therapy. And so a lot of times when we're looking at the family system as a whole, our counselors that work with children that might not fit into any of these categories we're talking about, those counselors can see the siblings and help the siblings process what's going on with their sibling, what the change in the family might be if, let's say, a baby's coming into the household that has complex medical needs. We work a lot with the siblings with individual counselors using just play therapy and talk therapy techniques that might not be specific to what their parents might need or the child with disability might need.
Well, that's huge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because folks don't always realize that anyone with a disability, it impacts the entire household, and it could impact them in different ways.
Yes, and that's when we look at the system of the family as a whole, this one thing changing or a change in diagnosis, it impacts every single person in that family.
And when we're looking at those families and kids versus parents or so on, we talk about the children's home. So children are of what age?
So all of our medical programs serve children birth through 21 years of age.
Okay.
Our adoption and permanency, which is really its own entity in itself, and then outpatient mental health counseling serves any age individual. There is no end gap for those programs. We want to serve all the family members in the home, as well as individuals in the community that may have experienced trauma, grief and loss, or any other need that might bring them into counseling.
I'm just thinking it's so huge to be able to look at it holistically and
Yes.
address all the different areas. Is there anything that, in your experience in doing this that has really stood out about, so glad we do this, this is where we really made a difference? What would that be for you?
I think it is in what you just said. I think the Children's Home in general and all of our programs has a very holistic approach to family empowerment and wellness. And being able to support the family in many different areas. And if we look at like a family that has a child with a disability, let's say, we're able to support the parents. We have marriage counseling, we have family counseling. We're able to support the youth through some of our medical programs. So not just the programs I oversee, but perhaps outpatient therapy or a child that's at Child's Way. And we kind of can serve a lot of different needs that family might have and look at that big picture and make sure that they are covered in a lot of different areas. And I think that's really a skill that we excel at.
Wow, that's a lot. And I know we'll have a future conversation, but in the meantime, just letting us know about the counseling and family support is really able to connect our community. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
I have with me Tom Janicki, co-founder of the MediTrust Agency. And when it comes to Medicare, people think of turning 65 and getting ready to retire. However, there's a lot more to it that people don't think about. So let's start with what's different about the team at MediTrust.
So I would say what's different about the team in MediTrust is we really care about each client. We're in the business to help people. We are driven to serve. So if anybody is struggling with decision making, struggling with the fact that it changes every year, it's nice to have an agent on your side, consistent communication, answers the phone when you call, and works through problems.
I think that's crucial to help folks. And traditionally, when folks are used to enrolling in Medicare when they turn 65, can you tell me about how you help people with disabilities?
So when you have certain disabilities, you're able to get Medicare earlier than 65. So they say, you get Medicare when you turn 65 or you are disabled.
Okay.
So it doesn't cover all disabilities, but we can dial in and help people that do get Medicare. We might be able to help your family get on Medicare. So there's a lot of avenues that it doesn't hurt to ask.
Oh, absolutely not. And many folks with disabilities have Medicaid. So how can you help them if they have Medicaid that potentially they would be eligible for Medicare?
So, that's funny because, they changed 2 letters, 3 letters, and
Yeah.
it's Medicaid and Medicare. So a lot of people get confused.
Sure.
Medicaid is to help those with low income, to cover some of the costs associated with health care. So that is a separate, 2 sides of the fence.
Right.
And so, it's nice to have an organization that can understand and help and educate through Medicaid decisions and through Medicare decisions, because they don't play in the same sandbox, but
Right.
in some cases, you can blend them into one plan.
And those plans, there are special needs plans.
There are special needs plans. They are dual eligible plans, and dual eligibility means I have a Medicare Part A and a Part B effective, and I have full Medicaid. So when you have Medicare Part A and B effective, and you have full Medicaid, then there are plans that are designed for that in a lot of cases just give supplemental benefits.
But those supplemental benefits might be something that without that coverage, you're paying out of pocket for that benefit.
Correct.
Okay. And when we look at the disability community, there are other people that you can help. I'm thinking, how maybe can you help caregivers? Because I know like a caregiver's working life may change based on providing care for someone with a disability. They may shorten their career, they may lengthen their career. So when it comes to Medicare, how are you potentially helping those caregivers?
That is complicated. The short answer is there are a lot of assistance programs. Being that we are in Medicare, we can't be pigeonholed as just Medicare. We know how to get assistance inside of the Medicare system, but it's deeper than that. There are assistance programs that are greater than that, like Meeting You. So understanding all the different programs designed to assist the families that are struggling with disability, these are things that we like to learn so that we might be able to connect dots for people.
And that's huge because, after all, it's not just one thing. People don't live in a bubble, and you need to have everything to support the people. And I guess let's also look at when you have folks that maybe have stayed in the workforce beyond their 65th birthday and maybe coming off of employer benefits. What does that look like? Is that a regular eligibility and enrollment?
It is not. We advise people to contact Social Security.
Okay.
Because the keys to getting Medicare flows through Social Security. Now, sometimes we can coach people on how to approach Social Security, what questions to ask Social Security, what paperwork to file with Social Security to gain access to Part A and Part B. But ultimately, we know how to direct people.
And that's important because I don't know what I don't know. So if you can guide me, that's helpful. And I guess, what else would you want people to know about MediTrust and your involvement in the disability community?
Well, so we are passionate. We're passionate about the people. We believe that it is, a calling to help the confusion that is Medicare. I like to say there are 3 languages that we're dealing with, but inside each language there are probably 10 languages. The languages are the doctors speak, the pharmacy speak, and the insurance carriers speak. They all are not operating on the same page. So, number one, it's important to help people make a decision on the plan. That is the assessment part, but then there's the service part. And that's learning all these languages and making sure that communication flows where, the denial is, fixed, or prescriptions that shouldn't cost money, get fixed, or a bill that someone gets that says, I shouldn't pay this. You call us, we call them, we connect all the languages all on one call. It's a process of service that we take very seriously. And, it's nice to work with communities that might not have that resource, that might want to have an open line of communication with someone that is driven to serve their best interest.
Absolutely. And I guess I would want to make sure that you mention, because, what I've seen is MediTrust is a family, and that MediTrust family does include people with disabilities. So you're not reaching out to somebody who's never heard of these things before or is coming from a different angle. But I guess knowing that information, please share with people where else we might find you in the community.
So we like to volunteer. We really appreciate opportunities to dig in and, show what we're about. And that is getting out into communities that we can just offer a helping hand. We believe in volunteering. We believe in trying to show who we are, so that maybe somebody can tell somebody. So, when we're inside of our community, we're all hands on deck. We're going to drop everything to solve a problem. But then it's nice to get outside of our bubble, get uncomfortable with different organizations, and, drive positive messages, like show up with a smile and a work ethic that is different. That's who we are. We wear it as a heart on our chest, and we love to just make people aware that we're available.
Well, I think that's a great place to leave it, because that is truly connecting our community. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you for having.
With me is Casey Peluso, Vice President of Programs and Outreach with the Parkinson Foundation of Western Pennsylvania. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Christine.
So we were talking before that, you are the Foundation of Western Pennsylvania. So you are a resource that is local to this area. Are there specific counties that you serve?
We serve certainly Allegheny County and then the 21 surrounding counties.
Okay. So all of Western Pennsylvania?
Yes, all of Western Pennsylvania, and even the tri-state area, such as Steubenville, Ohio area, Wheeling, West Virginia. And just to add, we have some virtual offerings, and we're willing, so we can provide assistance and education to anyone. We do have some even international members, but primarily we're focused on the Western Pennsylvania and tri-state area.
That's good to know that the local folks can find you locally. But why would they find you? What types of services do you provide?
We provide connections to resources. When someone, for instance, is diagnosed, it can be very overwhelming, and medical professionals often don't have the time to share information. So we help those with Parkinson's and their loved ones to navigate where to go, what resources. Is it a physical therapist that provides therapy that specializes in Parkinson's, support group. So we connect people with resources. We provide education through virtual webinars, in-person educational events, one-on-one, and support groups for those with Parkinson's, caregivers, care partners, family. And then exercise classes, both in person and virtually, because exercise is one of the best ways to manage Parkinson's.
That sounds like all really important, really great stuff. I mean, I think Parkinson's is something that someone would develop, so yesterday they didn't know they needed a resource that they need today and may not know how to find. When you're connecting folks with resources, what does that look like? Is that a simple phone call, or how do you make that connection?
It can be through the phone. We meet people in the community. We do have an office in Cranberry, and then also through email. So there's various opportunities. We could also have a virtual meeting.
Okay.
So often they'll learn of us through maybe it's a medical provider or an internet search or a friend or family, and then we'll connect with them in one of those capacities.
And what types of resources have you connected? You mentioned therapists, for OT, PT, those kind of things. What other types of resources have folks reached out to find with your organization?
Everything from like durable medical equipment to a healthcare professional that specializes in Parkinson's. Also a speech language pathologist, exercise classes. Some have even asked to speak with somebody else that has Parkinson's. And then support groups, of course, and ways to learn more about Parkinson's.
There's a lot, because again, it's the type of thing that I didn't know that I needed to know yesterday, and today I need a lot of assistance. I guess when you're also doing those things, you said exercise is important. What type, do people come together to do exercise physically in the same place? Do you offer something virtually, or do you just connect them to partners that may be in their local area?
Actually, all of the above. There are some instructors that work directly for the foundation, and they offer classes in the community as well as virtually. Those are live virtual classes. And then there's many other exercise instructors and healthcare professionals that lead classes in the community. So we offer some directly, and then we also will refer to other professionals and classes. So those are all group exercises.
Okay.
And that can be very beneficial. And a variety, not just, certainly strength and stretching and balance and cardiovascular exercise are all really important. So these classes emphasize many of those areas.
And I would imagine maybe that's not the first thing that people are seeking when they come to you, because if I've received a new diagnosis or I have a family member who has, when people come to you, what's usually the first thing?
I've heard what can I expect? Like, what will the future look like? That's often a question.
What can I expect? Is that usually the individual that received the diagnosis?
Typically, or often a spouse. And Parkinson's can vary so much. There are certainly the cardinal motor symptoms that allow you to receive the diagnosis, but then there are so many varieties and people progress at different rates. But I would say that's the most common question.
Okay. And for family members, that too, like what can I expect in the way of providing care? Right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And how can I be supportive? And, you know, depression, anxiety, and apathy can come with Parkinson's. So something else from a care partner is often, I understand that it's important for my loved one to see a physical therapist, participate in an exercise class, maybe a support group, but he or she is really reluctant. So how can I encourage them without, you know, being a nag or whatnot, to get them there or hopefully make that attempt.
Yeah. And is that a situation where you might put family members in touch with one another?
Yes, we could do that.
Okay.
We could do that. And yeah, and also like validating their experience, like this is real. And the support groups, I think, provide an opportunity for the family members. Some will attend without their loved one, and that's okay. And then they learn techniques from other family members or care partners.
Okay. Yeah, it seems that it would be really important to learn about the disease itself, like you said, what to expect and what that looks like from a caregiver standpoint. So that connection to resources, I can imagine, is huge, but the education of all parties, because I can imagine if it impacted my family, that impacts me, right?
Yes.
All of these services that you provide, is there any kind of subscription for this, or how, like, am I paying for these services? Are they covered by insurance? What does that look like?
There is not a subscription. The big step will be, may we add your information to our database, so you're on our email list.
Okay.
And what I've shared about connecting those with resources and support groups and exercise classes, those are primarily free. We are a resource at no cost to anybody. And sometimes there's a small fee for some of the exercise classes in the community and our annual conference, but we keep everything affordable and have scholarships. But overall, if you call or email to ask for information or resources, that is all free.
I love that, because the last thing I need to worry about is I'm desperate for a resource and I can't afford it.
That would be a big barrier. So with the generous support that's provided through our sponsors, et cetera, and donors, we're able to provide those programs and services at no cost, or very minimal cost for the few that I mentioned earlier.
Well, I really appreciate you sharing this information, because you truly are connecting the community with valuable resources. So thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Christine. And we have a great small team. I just wanted to mention we also have advocacy that's newer. There's a lot of environmental factors contributing, so we're working on getting paraquat banned in Pennsylvania. And then our website is pfwpa.org.
Thank you so much for sharing that, because when we're said and done here, somebody is going to need to reach you, and I appreciate you shared the website to do that. So
Thank you for
joining
your time.
me.
You're welcome.